Inflammation is blamed for causing everything from obesity to heart disease, high blood pressure, arthritis, asthma, ulcers, oral diseases, celiac, gut issues such as IBS, Crohn's, and UC, autoimmune diseases in general, and so much more.
However, does just pointing to inflammation as the cause of these issues really help anyone? It's time to find out. It's time to think again.
Inflammation, the body's kind of first line of defense against attack.
Did you know that pelvic inflammation can lead to sterility?
The connection between inflammation and depression.
But there's one ingredient that can help reduce inflammation.
What people may not understand is that is just the tip of an iceberg.
Some inflammation can be good, but most is bad. It takes a real awareness about what's causing that inflammatory issue in the first place if you actually want to be able to control it. Awareness is really that first step toward any sort of understanding. Now, a lot of people get chronic inflammatory issues that last way longer because they never realize what's truly causing it and they can't take a positive step to control it. The important thing to be aware of is that this is indeed a response, which implies a cause and effect relationship. So the first step you got to do is identify the culprit stressor, get rid of it, and then start introducing activators into your body, which are going to help you regenerate your health.
In the Principia, Isaac Newton's seminal work on the mathematical exploration of nature, he states that to any action there's always an opposite and equal reaction. In other words, the actions of two bodies upon each other are always equal and opposite in direction.
So I found it very helpful to remember that nothing escapes the law of cause and effect. Nothing is free. Nature itself is constantly compensating, and the human body is not exempt from that reality.
Inflammation is the body's chief compensatory response to chemical stress. The main macro process of opposing forces within your body is most easily understood as regeneration versus degeneration, and the oppositional nature between the two is almost always entirely influenced by environmental factors, the inputs that either allow for the cells to coherently regenerate or to dissonantly degenerate. Inflammation with the right element of control is a natural part of regeneration, a process known as hormesis. Hormesis is the impetus for adaptation and subsequent development of growth and increased strength within the system. Hormetic stress is especially important in physical training, mitochondrial adaptations, and the maintenance of homeostasis, which is itself a demonstration of the body's innate drive to balance. On the other hand, inflammation when uncontrolled drives degeneration. Cellular dissonance caused by inflammatory reactions manifests in systemic dysfunction in tissues, organs, and organ systems. As the body seeks homeostasis, the continual environmental input of inflammatory blockers compels it to find resources from within, since they're not being provided externally, in order to balance this degeneration, pulling micronutrients from important storage areas with inherently limited supplies.
Inflammation can ultimately be fatal. You need to understand it if you want to improve your health.
In 2012, the pioneering physiologist Dr. Raymond Peet from the University of Oregon wrote about an illuminating observation regarding the nature of the effect of inflammation on aging or degeneration in an organism by investigating the patterns seen in the brain development of different birds relative to their gestational environment. The chicken egg, when incubated with heat from the mother hen, is a self-contained environment with all the resources necessary for the development of a healthy baby chick, including glucose and nutrient-dense yolk. Brain growth stops when the chick embryo has consumed all of the available glucose within the egg and needs to switch to consuming the fat of the yolk. Chickens are known as precocial birds, meaning the chicks are completely developed when hatched, and therefore do not further require attention or care from the parent in order to survive into adulthood. In September of 1979, researchers Zamenhof and Ahmed conducted a study on the influence of external injection of micronutrients into the developing brains of baby chickens while still inside the egg. Zamenhof and Ahmed injected several different types of amino acids into the brains of the chick embryos and measured brain weight, DNA content, and protein content. They noted that several variations of the amino acid tryptophan severely inhibited brain development due to excess production of serotonin, while the introduction of glycine, which converts into glucose, stimulated significant brain growth. They concluded that brain weight and DNA were found to be significantly correlated with blood glucose levels, and that early brain growth might be manipulated in both directions, both inhibition or stimulation, by addition of proper nutrients during the sensitive period of neuronal proliferation. The positive influence of gestational glucose on brain development of the embryo has long been observed in many species, including humans. Results highlight the reality that glucose availability leads to larger brain sizes and increased neuron count in the newborn. So in theory, while the mother chicken provides an adequate environment for the embryo to grow and develop, it's not perfect. And that can be seen when you compare the chicken actually against other species of altricial birds like crows, parrots, and owls. These altricial birds are born into conditions that are more similar to humans. They need care from their mother throughout the early stages of life in order to survive. And they also have access to an additional source of steady glucose, which helps their brain develop over time, a lot like human brains. Parrots, for example, are considered to be highly intelligent and can live to be over 100 years old, and they can talk. Altricial birds are the only other animals that can produce human language. For example, the African gray parrot has such a highly developed speech ability that it can mimic up to 1,000 human words and has been shown in captivity to be able to actually comprehend what it's saying much of the time, which gives it the ability to communicate with humans in a conversation. Crows and ravens, also highly intelligent, can live between 10 to 60 years old depending on the environment, with the longest lifespan observed at 59 years for a captive pet crow named Tata from Bearsville, New York. Owls generally have extended lifespans up to 15 years depending on species. One great horned owl is known to have lived for 29 years. Altricial birds exhibit highly intelligent behavior patterns due to not only their more developed brains, but also because of their vulnerability and dependence upon parental care for early stage survival, which acts as an adaptive stress. Artificial intelligence researchers use the altricial precocial spectrum as a model for the development of machine learning algorithms. Computer scientist Aaron Sloman and cognitive scientist Dr. Jackie Chappell from the University of Birmingham published a paper in 2005 establishing their theory that robot learning requires two key factors for altricial development, specifically unpredictability, which is characterized in animals chiefly by the need to hunt unpredictable prey as opposed to grazing or foraging, and new niches, characterized by the need for rapid adaptation and recalibration, both of which highlight the need for rapid development of advanced intelligence for survival, dependent on the ability to learn and adapt to the environment quickly because of certain stimuli altricial species are commonly exposed to compared to the precocial ones. Birds have naturally high metabolic rates, evidenced by average body temperatures in the range of 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the egg, a precocial bird quickly burns through the available nutrient resources due to this high rate of energy consumption and needs. Its brain stops developing when glucose is no longer available. Altricial birds generally have longer lifespans and higher intelligence levels than precocial birds due to the combination of this high metabolic rate coupled with more glucose availability during the early stages of development and the exposure to unpredictable environmental stimuli which require the development of rapid skill learning for survival, a form of hormetic stress that makes the altricial animal more capable over time. The development of these birds and of all species in general depends highly on the interplay between the environment and our bodies, and the same is true of cells. Inflammation is completely environmental. Over time, inflammation changes the way your body can operate, namely how effectively it can regenerate or heal itself. This is due to internal shifts in resource availability, like nutrients, that the body needs for regenerative processes. You'll notice that in children and teenagers, the body can heal itself quite quickly after injury due to a higher regenerative capacity. Over time, as the body is exposed to an increasing amount of inflammatory environmental blockers, it has a decreasingly effective ability to recover. The buildup of inflammation inside your body is responsible for this, and you experience an increase in degeneration as you age and eventually lose the regenerative ability entirely, resulting in death. The inflammation response inside the body is characterized mainly by triggering the release of compounds known as inflammatory cytokines, which are catabolic, such as the interleukins IL-1 beta, TNF-alpha, IL-6, 15, 17, and 18. However, to highlight the opposing nature of regenerative and degenerative inflammation, it's important to understand that the body also has a host of anti-inflammatory interleukins such as IL-4, 10, and 13, which stimulate anabolic processes to restore order. So when the stimulation of inflammatory cytokines in the body outpaces the anti-inflammatory cytokines due to the excess stress in the environment, it disrupts homeostasis chronically, and destructive compensatory mechanisms kick in. Other inflammatory cytokines that have been linked to cellular degeneration discovered in much higher concentrations in adults compared to fetuses are PDGF, TGF, IGF-1, and BFGF, as well as the prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are formed from the synthesis of the polyunsaturated fats, linoleic acid, and arachidonic acid. Exposure to these supposedly essential fatty acids is entirely diet dependent and therefore entirely within your control. In the womb, the only possible way for the fetus to be exposed to these fatty acids is via the mother's dietary habits, and researchers have found that baby weights are negatively correlated with the maternal exposure to these inflammatory polyunsaturated fatty acids. The same researchers discovered that prenatal learning and memory are significantly retarded by exposure to PUFA in the womb. Monocytes, a type of white blood cell that are important for immune system adaptation, especially in the developing fetus, are killed off in the umbilical cord with exposure to polyunsaturated fats, which greatly compromises the child's ability to control inflammation properly as it continues to develop. Yet curiously, the US Food and Drug Administration has approved the use of manufactured additive forms of these harmful fatty acids into baby formulas. Degenerative inflammation has become commonplace, a way of life for most people, mostly due to our modern environment, dietary habits, and subsequent chronic deficiencies and unregulated stressors. This creates a steady decline in the body's ability to heal itself. Naturally, you start to experience symptoms of this degeneration over time, which most people chalk up to getting old. Inflammation is blamed for causing everything from obesity to heart disease, high blood pressure, arthritis, asthma, ulcers, oral diseases, celiac, gut issues such as IBS, Crohn's, and UC, autoimmune diseases in general, and so much more.
So does just pointing to inflammation really help anybody solve these issues?
No, it doesn't. Inflammation is actually just an early stage symptom, and it doesn't actually tell you anything about the true cause. So when you actually understand the true cause of the inflammation, you can do something about it by eliminating the blockers that are causing the issues with your regenerative abilities. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. The chief molecular indicators of degenerative inflammation are inflammatory cytokines and prostaglandins. You can control both of them easily. This is not a black box, as many people would like you to believe.
I recommend controlling your degenerative inflammation by altering your dietary habits. And in certain cases of acute inflammation, you can actually use exogenous compounds like certain supplement extracts and amino acids to help lower that inflammation level naturally. If we start with the most basic requirement for controlling inflammation in your body, it all comes down to heat production, your metabolism.
Your metabolic rate, easily measured by waking body temperature, is the indicator that not only is a high amount of energy flowing easily through your cells, but that your hormones are balanced, and any unfavorable anti-metabolic byproducts are limited and don't have much influence in creating any sort of cellular dissonance. You want your cells to consume as much oxygen and produce as much CO2 as possible. CO2 as a metabolic byproduct signals to neighboring cells in concert, fueling cellular coherence as a positive feedback loop upward through the structured systems of the body, which creates more order in those systems and more energy flow through them. CO2 is actually used in medical settings such as ICUs and in surgeries as a reliable way to shut down inflammatory cytokines and prostaglandin synthesis, and can reverse symptoms of leaky gut by aiding in restoring the structural integrity of the intestinal wall. A high ratio of CO2 to oxygen has been widely observed to have stem cell-like regenerative effects in living tissue. Not only have researchers discovered very high CO2 to oxygen ratios in animals such as salamanders and other amphibians like the xenopus, which possess the ability to regenerate brain tissue, retina, spinal cord, and even entire limbs, but they've also measured high CO2 to oxygen ratios in specific human tissues and organs that have regenerative abilities, such as inside the mouth, bones, bone marrow, the thymus gland, thyroid gland, the liver, which needs to be in presence of adequate thyroid hormone, and adrenal cortex, all of which can regenerate tissue without scarring or fibrosis. One amazing example of the human body's ability to regenerate tissue and bone is the regeneration of fingertips after amputation. Studying this phenomenon gives us a lot of insight into the power of CO2 production in living tissue. Conventional wisdom in the medical community holds the belief that the ability for the body to regenerate fingertips rapidly declines with age after childhood. However, is age really the issue, or are there other factors in play like cytokines? In fact, a study conducted on an average age of 50-year-old adults demonstrated significant ability to regenerate fingertips if certain conditions were present, namely CO2 and nerve growth factor BDNF.
So they found that the ability for the tissue to regenerate itself was dependent on putting the fingertip in an occlusive environment, basically creating humidity and trapping the CO2 from the body back onto the tissue, which ends up triggering growth factors that are super important for regeneration.
In fingertip regeneration studies, inflammatory cytokines are highly expressive in the first week due to the traumatic injury. Then in the right conditions, anti-inflammatory cytokines are more highly expressed during the second week after injury, indicating a positive shift in the body's healing response, which leads to oftentimes a full regeneration of not just the bone, marrow, and skin, but also the entire well-formed fingernail. Another key element in this progression of inflammatory degeneration, commonly expressed in autoimmune diseases, is the decreasing ability for the body to clear apoptotic or dead cells. Apoptosis is programmed cell death, and it's a normal process in living tissue required for proper growth and development. Cellular clearance that takes place inside our bodies is required in order to reinforce healthy systems and prune unhealthy ones, akin to a gardener pruning the dead branches from plants in order to keep the overall plant healthy. Apoptosis and clearance of apoptotic cells is an energy-dependent process. Energetic dysfunction leads to a decline in clearance. Active thyroid hormone T3 is necessary for the proper functioning of this clearance process of dead cells out of the degenerating tissue, which allows for the formation of new tissue.
But with excess inflammatory cytokine and prostaglandin activity in the tissue, which indicates degenerative inflammation, the body loses its ability to clear these dead cells.
For example, a study published in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Immunology demonstrated that radiation-induced inflammation causes a significant loss in the animal's ability to clear dead cells, which leads to a rapid onset of autoimmune disease symptoms. This is seen in the liver as well, with the liberation of free fatty acids causing significant degeneration in liver tissue. The researchers in that particular study concluded that the single most important factor in aging-related degeneration is the disruption of the glucose metabolism and the resulting hormone imbalance. He also noted that dietary calorie restriction could slow the decline.
The perfect place to start on our hunt for natural compounds that are going to lower the inflammatory cytokine response is to actually start to understand the cytokine response itself, namely all the other compounds that are involved in its reactions. Ultimately, the restoration of real health in your body, which is called thermo, is always going to end with micronutrients like the amino acid glycine.
It turns out that the inflammatory cytokine reaction increases in prevalence with glycine deficiencies. This makes a lot of sense because glycine has an inhibitory action, and via glycine-gated chloride channels in immune cells can temper many inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin-6. The important thing to understand about amino acids is the fact that in our modern, culturally normal diets, especially in the Western world, we tend to eat a lot of muscle meat and eschew meats such as organs, as well as collagen-rich connective tissue and bones from the animal. This leads to an amino acid imbalance over time in your body, causing deficiencies in amino acids that your body needs for important cellular processes, while increasing circulating amounts of other amino acids into a surplus, which can ultimately be harmful. For example, muscle meats, which do contain small amounts of glycine, are much higher in methionine, an amino acid that gets converted into the universal methyl donor SAMe. Your body has innate methionine regulating mechanisms to get rid of excess methionine. However, these mechanisms are dependent on the presence of adequate glycine to operate properly.
So without enough glycine, and especially in the presence of excess circulating methionine, your body's gonna have a really difficult time creating glutathione, which is the master antioxidant, and it's crucial for regulating inflammation.
The liver cannot keep up with the demand of trying to synthesize endogenous glycine via the glycine-serine pathway because you eventually run out of the raw materials involved in the process. Excess methionine sends your system into overdrive, trying to constantly get rid of it. This results in widespread degenerative inflammation in your body. Quite simply, consuming more glycine can stop this.
Luckily, glycine is actually really affordable and really easy to get in high amounts. Personally, I consume between 10 and 15 grams a day of glycine, specifically from collagen and grass-fed bone broth. And when I eat muscle meats, like maybe grass-fed beef or elk, venison, that sort of thing, which have a naturally higher level of methionine than glycine, I make sure that I also put some of the bone broth on that because it's really important to balance the glycine and methionine ratios. And it's actually super easy to do.
All this biology may sound quite complicated, but when a basic understanding of the need for these important nutrients is in place, taking action on it is surprisingly easy. I recommend building regular glycine consumption into your daily habits.
It's incredibly useful to your body, to say the least, so eat more glycine.
You've likely heard of turmeric. The NIH has a large body of documented human research on the benefits of using turmeric for a variety of reasons. Turmeric is a widely used root powder around the world and has been used for thousands of years, especially in native regions such as India, Asia, and Central America. One of the most common uses for turmeric is in pain management. In fact, put head-to-head with ibuprofen in studies, turmeric was shown to be more effective at reducing pain. Another study showed that rheumatoid arthritis patients who took a natural turmeric supplement saw greater improvements than patients given Voltaren, diclofenac sodium. In a 2016 study, researchers concluded that curcumin may be effective for treating joint-related pain. The Arthritis Foundation also supports the use of turmeric for relieving arthritic pain. Blood clotting is a common symptom of degenerative inflammation. Turmeric has antithrombotic properties. Curcumin may reduce stroke and heart attack by preventing clogged arteries. It does this by inhibiting platelet aggregation or the clumping of blood platelets that lead to clotting. Turmeric's effect as an anticoagulant was confirmed in a 2012 study. Curcumin is known to interact with neurotrophic factors or NTF in the brain. NTFs are a form of peptides that aid in the growth and maturity of brain neurons. Studies show that curcumin induces NTF production and may help treat various central nervous system disorders. Studies also suggest that turmeric may be more effective for treating depression than fluoxetine, the generic form of Prozac. In one study, 60 human subjects diagnosed with depression were given curcumin, fluoxetine, or a combination of the two. After 6 weeks, the curcumin group reported just as much improvement in mood as the fluoxetine group. A more extensive study with 108 male subjects yielded similar results. Turmeric contains natural COX-2 inhibitors. COX-2 is an enzyme that aids in the production of the fatty acid prostanoid. This compound is a primary mediator of inflammation. One study also found both turmeric and ginger to be effective for inhibiting cytokine production. Curcumin is especially known to treat the skin condition scabies, where microscopic mites called Sarcoptes scabi burrow under your skin. The eggs and waste they leave behind causes itchiness, rashes, and bumps. In one study, 814 subjects with scabies used a topical turmeric treatment. 97% experienced relief within 3 to 15 days.
Turmeric is in fact an age-old folk remedy in Ayurvedic medicine used for killing skin mites. Scabies, especially in densely populated areas where there's a lot of skin-to-skin contact, can become extremely common, but turmeric is very effective for getting rid of it.
BOSWELLIA is more commonly known as frankincense, with a rich ancient history. It happens to be incredibly useful for tempering inflammation, especially with respect to arthritic pain symptoms. An extensive 2011 report concluded that frankincense may be beneficial as an anti-inflammatory agent. This was supported by a 2015 study that showed strong evidence for frankincense as an inflammation suppressor. That's not all. A systemic review analyzing 47 studies on frankincense showed that the compound was effective for treating both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. On top of that, the research also concluded that frankincense was effective for treating other conditions such as colitis and Crohn's disease.
So how does frankincense bring down inflammation? It does this through multiple different ways, one of which is controlling the inflammatory cytokine response. And a cytokine refers to a protein that is involved in active cell signaling, and it can be pro or anti-inflammatory. They're secreted by the immune system to interact with other cells. Depending on the type of cytokine, you're going to get a different response. For example, a pro-inflammatory cytokine is going to create disease and illness in the body. And there are also anti-inflammatory cytokines which can be extremely useful for your health.
One study showed that frankincense suppresses pro-inflammatory cytokine production in joint cartilage. Furthermore, frankincense also contains a compound known as acetyl-11-keto-boswellic acid. Studies show that this substance inhibits an inflammatory enzyme known as 5-lipoxygenase.
On top of that, frankincense is actually well known as being useful for controlling the immune response, especially for people that suffer from rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a degenerative autoimmune condition that puts the body against itself. It has your body, your immune system fighting against itself, and that's where all these negative symptoms come from. Frankincense actually helps with the regulation of white blood cells, and it helps control that inflammation naturally.
Store shelves are lined with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, Motrin, and Advil for relieving arthritis pain. As with any other synthetic medication, there are side effects. Users of such products have reported nausea, stomach cramps, diarrhea, increased perspiration and swelling, and there's also a risk of overdosing on NSAIDs and causing serious health problems. Regular use of ibuprofen has actually been linked to stomach ulcers and gastrointestinal bleeding.
The likelihood of this happening depends on frequency and your sensitivity to the continued use. So if you're taking these drugs every single day to control the pain, the NSAIDs could be quite disastrous, especially with stomach ulcers.
According to data, roughly 1 in 13 cases result in death. The mortality rate increases to 1 in 5 when NSAIDs enter the equation. Bromelain is a protein-digesting or a proteolytic enzyme that's also known for its ability to ease digestion by reducing inflammation. It's found mainly in pineapple, particularly in the flesh and the stem. On a molecular level, bromelain is made up of several compounds such as cellulase, peroxidase, glucosidase, and protease inhibitors. Though the medicinal properties of bromelain are just starting to receive modern scientific validity, it's long been used medicinally in Hawaii and parts of South America. The studies behind bromelain as a digestive enhancer are strong. One research study suggests that the enzyme may inhibit the production of inflammatory cytokines. Another study arrived at similar conclusions. Researchers suggest that the plant-based proteolytic enzymes like bromelain may be a powerful aid for alleviating various digestive disorders. Athletes and post-surgery patients are also increasingly turning to bromelain as a natural alternative. A study in 2004 revealed that bromelain is effective for treating pain from an ankle injury. In the trial, 73.7% of subjects that supplemented with bromelain for 7 days reported less pain. Another study showed that bromelain reduced pain and swelling in patients recovering from post-operative surgery to heal a fracture injury. One study on asthmatic mice showed that bromelain may reduce allergic reactions that cause the airway to swell and become inflamed. Olive polyphenols and oleuropein are the components in olive leaf extract that offer numerous health benefits. Studies show that olive leaf extract possesses anti-inflammatory properties and protects against DNA damage that's caused by free radicals, among numerous other benefits that are thought to contribute to longer lifespans among those who consume olive leaf extract. Research has shown that olive leaf extract can improve the lipid profile and help with glycemic control in those who have been diagnosed with diabetes. The study conducted showed that olive leaf extract can help regulate blood pressure as well as cholesterol levels. Further research shows that the number of thromboembolic diseases are on the rise. Thromboembolisms are incidences in which a piece of a blood clot breaks off and travels through the bloodstream and blocks a different vessel. This study showed that the olive leaf extract has antithrombotic effects. The polyphenols in olive leaf extracts have been shown to have anti-inflammatory effects in individuals who have experienced trauma of the bone marrow. A separate study also concluded that olive leaf extract is anti-inflammatory in various metabolic pathways in the human body. Olive leaf extract is also beneficial for the skin. Studies show that when applied to wounds, it speeds up the healing process. The same studies showed that it also has anti-aging effects when used as a cream on the skin, due to the regenerative stimulation it provides to the tissue. Vitamin B3 as niacinamide is an important vitamin that is used in a lot of ways in your body. Niacinamide plays an important role in protecting your thyroid gland against excess oxidative stress, including inhibiting the release of free fatty acids, which is one of the key causes of thyroid dysfunction. Vitamin B3 boosts energy production in the cells and helps support metabolic rate via proper thyroid functioning. Niacinamide helps balance the thyroid and overcome or prevent either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. It's important to have all the right vitamins, minerals, and amino acids in the right forms and dosages in your body for a healthy thyroid, since they all interact with one another and help balance each other out. Focus on these thermofoods to get your daily requirements of niacinamide: chicken, liver, sardines, grass-fed beef, mushrooms, avocado, sweet potatoes. And if you want niacinamide from supplement form, I recommend pairing it with L-tyrosine, copper, and selenium, and a good iodine supplement from kelp extract as well, since they work together synergistically in helping overcome thyroid imbalance. Not only is B6 crucial in the synthesis of GABA, your body's chief inhibitory neurotransmitter, but it also has been shown to lower systemic homocysteine levels. Homocysteine is synthesized from methionine, and in high amounts will radically increase degenerative inflammation. Excess homocysteine levels are correlated with heart attacks, blood clotting, early pregnancy loss, neural tube defects, and strokes. Elevation of homocysteine is highly linked to serious neuropsychiatric issues, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and Alzheimer's. Dr. William Walsh highlights the importance of correcting B6 deficiencies in his book, Nutrient Power. Through analysis of hundreds of thousands of patients over his career in both clinical and lab settings, Dr. Walsh has identified predictable biochemical patterns present in all of the aforementioned neuropsychiatric conditions, most common of which is vitamin B6 deficiencies.
So when it comes to inflammation, you need to remember that the awareness about how inflammation works within your body is ultimately what's going to bring about a level of understanding that's going to allow you to take action and actually take control back over your health and get out of the degenerative cycle and start getting your body into more of a regenerative cycle where you're promoting a healthy body. Now, a lot of people really don't understand this stuff because people take these Band-Aid drug solutions to try to get rid of the inflammation, and it ends up just keeping them in that degenerative cycle for a really long time. Now, I think in terms of understanding inflammation, that it's time that we think again.